like my garbage truck. This truck is in honor of Kamala and Joe Biden. I just wanted to let you know that 250 million people, that's what I think the real number is for making America great again. 250 million, the real number. They don't think in terms of garbage, okay? They don't use terms like that, and it's a shame. And Joe Biden should be ashamed of himself if he knows what he's even doing. And she should be ashamed because she shouldn't let him do it. She's the vice president, but I assume she's acting as the president. She should never have let that happen. I hope you enjoyed this garbage truck. Thank you very much.
Look, the president wanted to clarify because he understood that what he may have said he understood that what he was saying was being taken out of context. So he wanted to be very, very clear about what he was trying to say. And I just read that out once over. You all have the tweet or the statement that's on X. If you want to read it right now, feel free to do so. And he was talking about hateful rhetoric, and we've called out hateful rhetoric from here. We have. Obviously, this hateful rhetoric was about a particular community, a community that the Puerto Rican community. They are Americans. This is a community that he respects, and he wanted to make sure he called that out. And hateful rhetoric should be called out. It should be. But at the same time, the president is a president for all.
So the entire bulk of her speech was Trump, Trump, Trump. This cannot be a good formula for winning. Just factually, if you were her campaign manager, would this be the numbers you'd want that were all you talked about with Trump? Does that sound like a winning team's final pledge to America?
What speech? No one's talking about the speech because Joe Biden blew it up.
Yes.
Joe Biden couldn't let Kamala have this moment. This was supposed to be his moment. This was supposed to be his close.
Yep.
And look what he did. He wouldn't let her have it. And this guy's been ruminating about the coup for months, can't get over it. He's a resentful old man who now Kamala has a restraining order. She's not allowed to go anywhere near this guy. He was within walking distance of this speech, didn't get a ticket. Ever since he said lock Trump up, they've been quarantining him at the White House.
So he was upset that she was on his lawn.
So she was on his lawn, get off my lawn. And they hand the guy a laptop for a Zoom. Now, you know what Bidens do with laptops. It's not good. You never want to give a Biden a laptop because it's always going to be a disaster. So he gets out there on the Zoom and just screws up her closing message. And what is she going to do now? Everyone's talking about this. Let's say the nice things. OK, here are the nice things. Her hair looked great. I agree. The lighting was perfect. But I have sources there that said she walked out on the stage and no one cared. And my source is Johnny. He was at the Ellipse, and she's talking about there was 100,000 people there. He said there was 30. And you know how they got 30, Tyrus?
Buses.
Bus lists.
Wow.
He overheard these
Facts.
two women talking about, are you on the bus list? Oh, I'm on the bus list. And so what they do, if you're a government worker in Washington, you get on a bus list. They have your cell. They have your address. And then you just say yes. And then the buses come in and they pick you up and they bring you to political rallies. That's how they get people in the stands for this. The two pillars of her speech were ridiculous. One, Trump's a fascist. Two, she's going to bring the country together and solve problems.
But
two biggest lies anyone's ever heard.
Dana, you've been on the other side of this. You've been in the political war rooms and stuff like that. Does this sound like a team that's winning? Or is this panic mode?
Well, I agree. If her speech was that great, we would have been leading with it in the A block.
Yes.
What happened is that Joe Biden stepped on it and killed her momentum, and I'm sure she's furious about it, but trying to make, lemonades out of lemon. But the thing is, if that's the easiest thing to invite him to. You don't get a speaking opportunity, but sir, you get to sit right here and watch. That would have been a nice thing to do. Instead, he's on the Zoom, ruining her whole thing.
Joe Biden finally said what he and Kamala really think of our supporters. He called them garbage.
There's been a lot of question about whether this really matters as much as the original garbage conversation that a comedian had on stage at Madison Square Garden. That was a comedian. Almost nobody knew who he was. They couldn't even make the connection with Tom Brady's roast. They didn't remember him, apparently. This is a sitting president of the United States saying that half the voting public is garbage. That's different. That's bigger. And to me, it has legs different from deplorables because of the timing of it, the last 7 days or so in the election process, with a candidate we don't know that much about, his vice president. And now he's starting to try to define the opposition with words like that, kind of stepping not on her, but over her. Disrespectful. She has to talk it back. He's taken some of the shine out of her closing arguments. I mean, it's a lot. And I think it matters because he's the current president.
Well, this is a rite of passage, it seems, for Democratic elites to smear people that disagree with them, whether it was Obama smearing Republicans as bitter clingers, whether it's Hillary smearing Trump supporters back in 2016 as deplorables, and then Biden coming out of the woodwork and coming out of hibernation to say people that support Trump are garbage. But you got to step back at it and say, you know, this is blowing up in their face. And it's kind of poetic justice because Kamala's there. They do this massive speech on the ellipse, massive production value to try to have a closing argument. And she's there trying to say, and look, it's not sincere because she believes the same that Biden and Obama, Hillary do. But she's trying to say, if you don't vote for me, I reach out my hand. I want to work with everyone. And she's trying to do that message. And so as she's doing that, here comes old Joe blundering into the scene, now saying that all the Trump supporters are garbage, totally undercutting her at that key moment in the race. And, you know, she had opportunities to distance herself from Joe Biden's administration. I mean, obviously she's Veep, but she could have said she disagrees with the border policy. She disagrees with 13 Americans being killed in Afghanistan. And yet she says there's not a single thing that comes to mind that she would have done different. And so these guys are stepping in it. And I think it's going to end up making a difference.
You know, that's such a great point because right now she's bitterly clinging to Biden. She was, you're right, given opportunity after opportunity to create some distance with Joe. And so she walked into this speech last night, basically Joe Biden in a pantsuit. So when something like this, as devastating as this, comes down the pipeline, where she needs distance, she's just right here, just hugging this guy, and it doesn't pass the smell test that all of a sudden, oh, now she disagrees. You mentioned poetic justice. I call it karma, whatever you want to call it. Do you believe in karma, Governor? Because they have not run an honorable or noble campaign.
Well, that's exactly true. I mean, I think you look at what they've done from the beginning. I mean, even more recently, their closing argument seemed to be that Donald Trump is like Hitler, like a fascist. He was president for 4 years, guys. People can watch and see what happened. I didn't see that happen in those 4 years, but what they're doing is they're really stirring up, I think, a lot of division in this country. And think about it. If they are convincing you as a voter that American democracy will end if Donald Trump is president, you can see why you have some of the problems that we have and some of the things that have been stirred up amongst the populace. So I think it's been a very dangerous game that they're playing. I think it is born out of desperation. I don't think it's going to work, but they know exactly what they're doing.
I think it's become very apparent that Kamala Harris does not want conservatives, does not want Republicans, doesn't even really want to have conversations with us in Washington, let alone the American people and your average American. Regardless of what she says, she's not from a middle-class family. She's been out of touch and in D.C. for far too long, and she's expecting Americans to trust that she'll fix the very country that she's been responsible for breaking over the last 4 years. So to put it in perspective, Laura, what you're seeing and what you're hearing is the message of a dying campaign. The reason why President Trump is so positive is there's one point in a campaign, and every single person who's ever run for office will tell you, you know when you're going to win, and I think he knows he's going to win. We just need people to show up and vote. But Kamala Harris knows she's losing. Her messaging is not resonating with the American people, and you're seeing that live in real time.
It's very hard to believe that there wasn't even an apology from Joe Biden toward Kamala Harris for what was said. And, you know, you say Kamala Harris distanced herself from these remarks, but she didn't really do much distancing, and she made a false claim saying she doesn't like to disparage voters who aren't voting for her. The problem is that so many people in her campaign and she herself have spent much of the last few months calling people who don't support her campaign racist, bigots. Last week, they were really leaning hard into Nazis. Her running mate today called supporters of Donald Trump Nazis. And so it's hard to distance yourself from President Biden when so much of your campaign messaging also seems to be similar.
So just a short time after that comment was made, which we showed earlier in the show, by the current president about supporters of Trump being garbage, this was the reaction on stage in Allentown, Pennsylvania from President Trump. Watch.
Garbage, I think, is worse, right? Please forgive him, for he not knoweth what he said. These people, it's terrible, terrible. Terrible to say a thing like that, but he really doesn't know. He really, honestly, he doesn't.
But in reality, President Biden, as you just referred to in terms of the Biden-Harris administration, has been going after Trump supporters for a really long time. Here's a quick montage to remind people. Number one.
Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. This MAGA threat is a threat to the brick and mortar of our democratic institutions. But it's also a threat to the character of our nation. He talks about the blood of America as being poisoned, echoing the same exact language used in Nazi Germany. The MAGA Republicans, led by a defeated president, is trying to steal history.
So it looks like a tight election. They seem to double down, really. They must feel that this works for them, Molly.
Well, it is a tight election, but Kamala Harris is running so far behind where Joe Biden was 4 years ago and where Hillary Clinton was 8 years ago. This is a very curious closing message, though. You look at what you just showed a few minutes ago. Donald Trump says his closing message is, I'll fix it. That kind of gives people an idea of why they might vote for him. Her closing message is, you're a horrible person if you don't vote for me. And I'm not sure. I mean, it might work. We'll have to find out next week. But it doesn't seem to be as hopeful or joyful as she claims she wants to be.
Yeah, why do you think we saw that shift? Because she was actually at her highest point right out of her convention and right after we saw what I call the big switcheroo, the switch of the candidates. That was her highest point. So why do you think that she has gravitated to this sort of darker message in the later months?
Well, campaigns always seem to embody the presidential candidate. And there is something incoherent about her own message, and it seems to be filtering down to the campaign. But there's this other thing that also is true, which is Donald Trump has some of the highest favorables he's ever had.
And he does it by not trying to shapeshift or be something different than he is. He's still a billionaire, but he's wearing the vest, and he's making jokes about it, talking about how it makes... The only reason he walked out there is because it made him, his staff told him it made him look thinner. And so they conned him into wearing it. And people realize the authenticity of that, just like with the McDonald's thing. They realize the authenticity of it. And he's not pretending to be one of them, but he recognizes them, he sees them, and he even talks about, he gave a shout out saying that, you know, we always thank the police and firefighters, but, you know, thank God for the sanitation men.
Absolutely.
And he gave them a shout out. And when you look at Donald Trump's entire career, I've always kind of thought of him as he's always kind of run as our garbage man. And of course, Washington is a cesspool. It's tons of garbage everywhere. And you're not looking for some nice, squeaky clean guy, although he did say that the garbage truck driver looked like Cary Grant in his prime.
Total Trump line.
But what we're looking for is a guy that's willing to do the dirty work, to do the hard work. And he's proven that he can do that. And he marries it so nicely with this terrific rally and this terrific little stunt that is going to be remembered forever.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.